So it's a pleasure to have everybody here this evening for tonight's fall enrichment experience, which I think is going to be an excellent one. KAUST, like all universities, has many missions. One of them is to encourage creativity and innovation that can impact the kingdom. I've often talked in many settings that the technology that we're all so tied to, whether it's our iPhones, iPads, or whatever is coming next, will all be obsolete in 5 to 10 years, and someone has to invent what will come next. And so the question is, why not you? And I think that that's something that you should always ask yourself, why not you as a member of the KAUST community? But today's speaker is a case in point about the ability to impact technology with creativity and innovation that is not necessarily tied to one's age. In reality, she may be evidence that creativity is tied to age, but it just doesn't work in my favor. So, Anne Makosinski is an award-winning inventor who's been recognized for over 6 years for the advances and innovations that she's produced. Her areas of focus really center on green technology and the desire to reduce, if not eliminate, the use of batteries in low-powered electronic technologies. The two inventions I'm most familiar with are the hollow flashlight, where you can use your own body heat to be able to power a flashlight, and the e-drink, which I think is really, truly brilliant and a perfect thing for all three of my sons, because they all pour a cup of coffee and let it sit on their desk for 30 minutes before they drink it because it's too hot. She designed a cup that had a USB connector that allows to take that heat reduction, turn it into electrical energy, and you can charge your cell phone while you're waiting for your coffee to cool. And each of these products seem to be remarkable in their creativity that they represent, and in my mind sound like perfect Christmas presents. More amazingly, Anne is a sophomore at the University of British Columbia studying English literature. So either the English Lit program at UBC has a remarkable investment in entrepreneurship, which I doubt, or Anne is truly a gifted observer of the world around us and how inventions can impact our lives. And I truly am looking forward to hearing more about what she can tell us about science and the art of innovation. So please join me in welcoming Anne to the stage.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anne. Thank you so much for being here. How are we all feeling today? Sounds very enthusiastic. Okay. So I'm from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, way on the west coast. So I'm a little jet-lagged, but I think we're going to be good. Thank you to Mr. Lubino and Marie-Laure for inviting me here to speak. I'm so excited. I finally got to make it out here, and I'm so excited to share a little bit of my story with you guys. So when I was a little girl, my first toy was a box of transistors and other old electronic parts. My mother was a little concerned I may stab myself or injure myself playing with these sharp wires, but I tended to do fine. And from there, because I wasn't given many toys as a kid, I would take garbage like old containers or cereal boxes and wire from around the house, and I would take my hot glue gun and piece together inventions. Of course, they never worked, but the idea of taking the resources around me and piecing them together to make something better was something that just kind of came naturally. I wasn't given any video games. I didn't get a phone, which ended up being a flip phone until I was 18 years old. So I had very few distractions when I was a kid, and I was raised very eccentrically, you could say. When I lost a tooth, I would get an opera under my pillow instead of a couple dollars, and I was raised on old 1920s silent films. It sounds ancient and terrible, but it was actually great. So I'm going to show you a little video of some of me at some sort of age, at 6 years old or so, showing some of my inventions so you can get an idea of what I would do.
This invention was my second invention. And is called creation. The one I just showed you is called invention, because that's the first one I made. Now this one, you see this flat one is post, so he can sit down on him, or I can sit down on him. Creation. But I don't sit very long because he can break.
Okay,
Even though he has this under.
Continue. Thank you. So that was some of the stuff that I would make for fun, and there was like a whole table there of different inventions I would do. And from there, when I got a little older, I started soldering simple circuits and just taking apart old computers and printers for fun. I didn't necessarily understand how all the parts in the electronics worked, but it was just very fascinating for me to see what was inside. And because these videos would go on for almost an hour, of just me talking and talking. And so my parents noticed I had this love for talking and tinkering, and they suggested that I join the local science fair on Vancouver Island, from where I'm from. So this is me back when I resembled Harry Potter. People would usually think I was a boy most of the time. This is my very first science fair project, and it was comparing laundry detergent brands. Tide works better, if anyone wants to know. And even though this had nothing to do with, what I do now with harvesting alternative energy sources, I caught what you could call the science fair bug. Have any of you guys in the audience done science fair before? Or are doing one as a master's student? Okay, we got a couple. Very nice. So what happened was I loved doing science fair. I loved coming home after school and working on an area of science that totally interested me and maybe didn't have to do with my schoolwork at all, and just spending my own time on it and then getting to present what I had found and what I'd learned to others. So I did a total of 10 science fairs from grade 6 to grade 12, so I'm a little bit of a nerd, you could say. And I loved it. It was an amazing experience, and I honestly feel I learned a lot more from my science fair experiences than I did sometimes in the classroom, and where I learned very traditionally. So 80% of learning happens outside of the classroom. So it's really important that students and teachers and parents start thinking, hey, so what am I doing once I come home after university, or when my kid comes home after school? What are they doing? And really seeing that they should also be engaged in learning all the time, and not just when they're in school. And this was something that I just did naturally as a kid because I didn't have that many distractions. So once I came home after school, I would just be like, okay, let's work on my science fair projects. So I'm half Filipino and half Polish, and we visited the Philippines a few times while I was growing up, and also India. And I had made some friends there, and then one day when I was in grade 9 or 10, one of my friends in the Philippines, I was chatting with her online, and she told me that she had failed her grade in school because she couldn't afford electricity. So she had no light to study with at night. And as a 14-year-old, that was really shocking to hear, that someone else, just like me, just somewhere else around the world, didn't have something as simple as light or electricity. So I decided to base my science fair project for that year around it and create a source of light for her that wouldn't require batteries. So I decided, this is a very basic diagram, to use something called a Peltier tile, which is those white tiles up there. And inside these white ceramic tiles, there's many junctions or connections of two dissimilar metals, usually bismuth and telluride. And so if my hand is a tile, and I heat one side of the tile, and I cool the other, a small amount of electricity is produced. So I thought, this is kind of interesting. I had used it in some of my previous science fair projects, and thought maybe I could implement it in a flashlight of sorts. Again, very basic diagram, but basically I took these tiles and I would put my hand, or the palm of my hand, on the top part of the tile, and I would cool the other side of the tile with a hollow aluminum tube. And this would allow for maximum air convection currents to flow through and around the tube and cool it even further. So basically, the greater the temperature differential between the hot and the cold side of the tile, the more electricity was produced. Then I ran it through a simple circuit, and I produced light. So this was the very, very first prototype of my flashlight. And as you can see, I used plastic piping, PVC piping from Home Depot and foam to insulate the grip part, and I had these four Peltier tiles, those white tiles there, and a very simple circuit, aluminum tube, and I presented it at my local science fair, and that was just something that I did and I was really interested in. And these are some of the slightly more modern flashlights. These have 3D printed cases now, have reflectors, and the tiles are on the bottom. You just can't see them in this photo. And I brought a couple earlier prototype versions of the flashlight with me, so if you guys want to come up after I talk, I will be happy to show you and let you try them out. So I don't usually discuss this, but I did a lot of other kind of invention-y projects in between my grade 6 to grade 11 year when I presented the flashlight. And I never really talk about them, but one in particular I felt I should talk about today, and because it is so hot here and very sunny here. So for one project when I was in grade 8, I called it the solar sandwich. It was very interesting. So I took solar cells, and then I placed Peltier tiles that use heat to produce electricity under them, and then I placed them in like a plastic container with a clear top, and then I would float it in water, and the Peltier tiles were exposed at the bottom. And so what would happen is the sun would come in, hit the solar cells, produce electricity, but it would also heat up the hot side of the Peltier tiles, and the cool side was cooled by the seawater. And I kind of left it at that, but I thought there's so much heat and sun over here in Saudi Arabia, maybe some of you guys could try and revamp that into something that would be more useful, because it definitely has a lot of potential to be used in different places around the world. So basically with the flashlight, I went and applied for the Google Science Fair, which I had never heard of it until someone had told me about it, and I ended up being one of the 15 finalists that got to go to the Google headquarters in Mountain View and compete, and I won my age category, and a bunch of cool stuff happened. And then I also created another invention called the e-drink, which was already talked about, but it's a coffee mug that takes the excess heat of your hot drink and converts it into electricity. So if you drink a lot of coffee, which I'm sure some of you guys may do, you can eventually give your iPod or iPhone a small boost of energy. It's very much in prototype phase, but hopefully once I get the flashlight licensing deal done, I can move on to the e-drink. And yeah, I presented it a little, and what about now? So right now, I'm in third year university at UBC in Vancouver. And I'm actually studying English literature, which surprises and shocks a lot of people. And when I was in grade 12, I became confused whether everyone kind of expected me to go into engineering or if I really wanted to. So I decided, even though I had some offers from universities, to just take a general first year in the arts at UBC and then see where it took me. And by then, my outside of school schedule got pretty hectic. I travel a lot to do talks and various engagements. I'm actually missing 4 weeks of school in first semester. So it became kind of more realistic to pursue an English lit degree, so I could be a little more absent. But also, I had always loved film since I was a kid. I always had this part of me that loved art as well, and I didn't want to stop doing that just because I had my own company and was doing Inventions. So what I decided to do was have all my science and business stuff outside of school, and then keep my arts interest inside of school and also keep learning about that. I'm currently writing a children's series about STEAM, which I will talk about later on. And yeah, there's a bunch of interesting things happening. And for the flashlight, we are currently trying to get a licensing deal down. We have people who are interested, and hopefully we can put the flashlights in emergency kits because they sit for years. There's no batteries in them, so it'll never corrode, as well as distributing them to people in developing countries or girls or boys trying to learn how to read who don't have electricity. So I wanted to talk a little bit about inventor versus entrepreneur. I'm sure entrepreneur is a huge buzzword nowadays. I have lots of friends who are like, oh yes, I'm a budding entrepreneur, or all these sort of terms that they use. And I prefer, even though I have my own company and I have a lot of stuff going on, I prefer to not call myself an entrepreneur because I think the word is kind of misunderstood. So for how I see it, at least, an inventor is someone who has that great idea and they make it into a physical prototype or invention in front of them. And then an entrepreneur takes that invention and puts it on the market. And you can be both. You can be both an inventor and an entrepreneur. But it's also important, especially for younger kids, to realize that an inventor is just as cool as an entrepreneur, because sometimes people just don't think that for some reason. So I have a lot of questions, and people always ask me, like, okay, so I have all these great ideas in my head. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I make it into something that's going to be in front of me? So everyone's creative process is a little different, but I thought I'd give a couple tips from my limited experience. So the first one is just to look around you and find a problem, especially if it's a friend's or your own problem or your parents' problems. I find when you find something that you want to fix and it has a personal connection to you, it makes you much more motivated to actually work on it. Because a lot of times we're like, oh yeah, I'll do that, I'll fix that, and then it never gets done. Second one is always to look at current solutions, see what's already out there, what's on the market, and what could compete with your solution that you have in mind, and think about what will make your invention different, what will distinguish it from things that people could already buy. And number 4, especially if you're younger or older, doesn't matter what age you are, it's really helpful to find a mentor, or I guess in master's students, like a professor, I'm sure you already know this, who will help you out and guide you with your research or your tinkering or whatever you're trying to learn. Number 1, you don't always need a fancy lab. This is more for when I'm talking to a younger audience. A lot of kids, when they watch fancy sci-fi movies or TV shows, they see all these fantastical-looking science labs, and they're like, oh, well, I couldn't make anything as cool as the stuff in the movie unless I have this crazy lab to work in. And for me, I actually started tinkering in our basement at our home, where we just had some few, simple screwdrivers, soldering iron, and microscope. And that's how I started. I started using the machine shop eventually at our local university to cut some of the parts for the flashlight, but I never, had a research lab and stuff like that. Also, great thing, sometimes you have a solution and then you get totally carried away with it, and then you realize, wait, maybe some of the technology that exists right now won't make that even happen. So it's always good to be slightly realistic, but also a little dreamy when you're coming up with ideas. The messy part that I can't really advise you on is that step in the middle where you have this idea, you know it's possible, you know what solutions are out there, and you know what you want to do, and then there's this gap of you just playing around and tinkering and just trying and trying. And I feel like a lot of students also, when they're in this process of trying to make an invention, they experience failure. And that's really hard, especially, for any age, I think. And when I was making my science fair projects and I was, 13, 14, whenever something didn't work out, I would just be very frustrated. And I found if I took a break for a day and then I left and did something, maybe I played my piano or, went for a walk with my cat, I would come back to it afterwards and I would know, like, okay, this didn't work out, let's try something different. And just realizing that failure is a learning process, if anything. And just keep going, and finally, you will have a final prototype. I don't know if there is something like a final prototype. I think, especially for me, there are so many prototypes of the flashlight just abandoned at the home that were like half done or didn't work. So just keep on going. I wanted to touch a little on patents. Has anyone here gotten a patent or is applying for a patent? One person, 2. Okay, we got a couple. So I started the patenting process for my flashlight, I believe, at the end of my grade 11 or grade 12 year. And it's been about 3, 4, almost 5 years. I say 4 years. And this summer, I just got the U.S. patent. Not even the Canadian patent yet, just the U.S. one. And it was over at least $30,000 down the drain just to get this singular patent. So it's really time-consuming. It consumes your budget. There's actually a great way, if you have an invention and you can get it into an art exhibit, It is protected there technically as well, has copyright. So it's an easier way to get around it, which I wish I'd known before. But if you have an idea and you really want to fight for it and you feel like it has something unique, totally go for a patent. And there's lots of grants, I'm sure, around here that you can get for that. And then people always ask, like, okay, so I have it. I have this prototype. What do I do now? I want to get it out in the market. Couple main options: Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Posting it online, starting a campaign, getting movement around it is always great. Or what I'm doing is a licensing deal for the flashlight, which is a little easier, especially if you're busy and you want to move on to a new thing, or you're a student like me. So basically, you license it to, and you license the patent and the invention to someone with a company, and they will manufacture it and improve your invention, and they have the connections to sell it. Or you can get investors, which is something I have no experience with, actually, but I have a lot of friends who do have them, and it seems to go okay, but obviously you have to pay them back with interest, etc. Something else I wanted to touch on, because I am talking to also a slightly younger crowd, is I notice, like, for me, I have a lot of things that I do after school. I'm always either doing my homework, like any student, but I also have stuff to do with the flashlight, the company, speaking, the book, all these different things. So I'm always really busy, but I'm also really excited about all these extracurricular things that I'm doing. And I noticed that some of my friends back where I live in Victoria, who kind of are in those early 20s or late teens, a lot of them go to school and they come back home and they're on their phones, they're on their technology, and that's really all they do. And I've noticed that a lot of my friends who are like this are actually very unhappy with themselves. And I think it really has to do because they haven't found something that they're really passionate about. They don't have any really strong interests. And it's really important to keep in mind that with all this amazing technology, like phones, iPods, computers, laptops, tablets that are around us all the time, especially when you're younger, I feel you can become so influenced by that you're always going to be looking for external entertainment, when in reality, sometimes it's important to look for internal entertainment in your brain. And when I was a kid, because I didn't have a lot of, video games or TV or anything, I would always be looking internally to find a way to entertain myself and to learn and to engage. So I feel like it's important to say, like, put down your phone for at least half an hour a day and just do something completely different. And don't be afraid to try new things that you're absolutely terrified to do. So I'm sure we've all heard of the term STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. I think it's a little old-fashioned. I think it should be STEAM, which includes the arts and design. We have tried recently to get a lot more women into STEM, and because usually we see women doing stuff with arts and design, which are seen as more, emotional and all these things, when in reality, perhaps that's not the best approach. Perhaps we should be bringing arts and design into science and creating STEAM. And if you think about it, a lot of the great scientists were also great artists. Back in the day, we had Leonardo da Vinci. He was this amazing artist, but he also was creating inventions that were well beyond his time. And if we think about Albert Einstein, great mathematician, and he was a first-class violinist. I actually have a friend's parent back in Victoria. He's a top physician, mathematician as well, and he just played a violin concert at Carnegie Hall. So there's this huge correlation, and there's been many studies shown that art really benefits, or music specifically as well, the brain when it comes to science and logical activities. I've played piano since I was in kindergarten, and one year in high school, I decided to drop my piano lessons, and my grades also dropped that year. I don't know why, but I think there's this definite huge correlation between both the arts and sciences, and it shouldn't be ignored. Arts arts and sciences should have equal value. They complement each other so well. Like, what are we all holding right now? A lot of you guys are holding your iPods or your phones, and you're wearing an iWatch maybe. You know, we have all these technical accessories around us, and we kind of expect them to be part of our fashion, part of something that we would carry around and happily use. And, you know, back in the day, these sort of technologies were, well, I wasn't alive then, but I hear that, you know, technology was kind of ugly. And Steve Jobs really brought in this amazing design and aesthetically pleasing things to technology, even if it was just font types. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge that both arts and sciences, design and science, come together really strongly. And I find with my education at least, because I have this balance of both arts and sciences, it lets me be more creative and also less stressed out. So highly recommend, if you are really into your sciences all the time, try and take a step back and do something more creative. You know, if you used to paint in high school, try that out, or take your tutu and, you know, do ballet or something. But you never know what will happen if you try and balance out both the creative and the logical sides of your brain. So before I leave, I would like to give a couple pieces of advice. This one by Casey Neistat. Who knows who he is? We got some people? Okay, good. He, in one of his vlogs that I was watching, because I watched too many of his vlogs, he said that the most dangerous thing you can do in your career is to play it safe. Now, he's obviously not saying to take ridiculous risks that nobody would ever do, but I think it's important to sometimes take a leap of faith if you're really passionate about something and you know that you want to do it and you want to learn about it. And sometimes, you know, when I was in grade 12, a lot of my friends were like, oh, well, I'm going to study to be a lawyer. And I was like, okay, like, that's cool. Like, why do you want to do that? And because they never expressed any interest in being a lawyer. And my friend was like, oh, well, it's, you know, a very safe job, and I'll get good pay, and, you know, that just sounds cool. And I was like, okay, but maybe that's not what you really want to do. You're not doing it for the right reasons. You should take a little bit of a risk. And then he actually changed his degree and is now working to be a police officer because he's really into helping other people. So it's really interesting, but always take a little risk. Take a little jump. If you're really scared to do something, you should just go and be positive and do it anyways. This summer, I went on a ship for 2 weeks through the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. And I was terrified to go on. I didn't know anybody on the ship. I heard there wasn't going to be any Wi-Fi, which basically means death. And I was so scared. I thought, maybe I'll be seasick the whole time or something. But after I went, I had the most amazing time of my life. And I think if you just try things that you're so scared of, but you don't know what you're going to miss, if you don't know what you're going to miss, so just try new things, don't be scared, and never stop learning. Once you come home after school, put down your phone, read a book, read something. I mean, how often do we sit down for 10 minutes and read something now if it's not a textbook? And just because you're a university student or high school or middle school student, that doesn't mean that's all you can be. You can be a university student also doing your own startup or working on an invention after school. Don't let what you do, don't let, just because you're a student, don't let that define that that's the only thing you can do until you graduate. You can start at any time pursuing what you want to do and your passions. I'll leave you with this. Creativity is contagious, so pass it on. Hopefully I inspired a few people in the audience, if you're not asleep already. And if you have any questions, I believe we are going to do a Q&A now with the mic that we throw around. Yes? Good.
So thank you. I think we have time for some questions now, and we have a microphone that evidently we will throw at you. So, perfect.
Nice catch.
When you talked about STEAM, do you mean art like also acting? Because in school, acting is also considered an art.
Yes, yeah, that includes acting. Actually, some teachers in different parts of the world, they incorporate acting and dancing and teaching math lessons to kindergarten students to learn how to count, and they actually learn much more effectively and they do better on tests. So yeah, try acting. You have something creative, try something in STEM and put them together and see what you get. You never know.
Have another question in the back? Hand went up and went back down again.
Over there. Just throw it forward. There's a lady there.
Someone right beside you here.
Thanks for the nice talk. I was just curious when you are talking about your e-mug. So when you are getting the electricity out of the excess heat, this energy is a form of, it's conserved, right? So the excess heat, you don't want to get it colder.
We want to take that. Well, usually hot drinks are very hot, so we can't drink them right after they've boiled. So while you're waiting for it to cool down to a drinkable temperature, we take that excess heat. We're heating one side of the Peltier tile, and then on the other side of the Peltier tile, we have this kind of aluminum solid base that will take the heat and cool it down and put it into the table material. I'm actually developing a coaster version, which I think is a little more realistic because not everyone carries around coffee mugs anymore, and I think it'll be a little more efficient, but we'll see.
Like you can literally see the temperature, you can control.
You can't see it yet. I actually never thought about doing that, but that's actually a good idea. Maybe I'll try that.
Thank you.
In that machine that takes the heat from the mug, does it cool the mug?
Well, because you're taking heat away from the hot drink, you're cooling the drink a little faster than it normally would. So yes, but not too cold. You can still drink it after.
Is there any other invention that you're making right now or something that you might want to tell us?
Yeah, I'm working on an invention also using human heat again for a company, and has to do with bikes. So I'll let you guess. But
We've got someone over here who'd like to. Okay.
I was wondering if maybe you could make like another invention, or maybe like I like to read a lot of books, but sometimes I need to do something real fast, but then the pages like flip over.
so like a page holder.
Yeah.
Maybe it produces electricity while you're reading or something.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll think about it.
Sometimes I like want to use my iPad afterwards to see what a word means or something, but then my iPad's out of battery.
So something that could charge off page flipping and hold your pages so it could charge your iPad.
Yeah.
I think you could actually come up with a solution for the page flipping thing, and then I'll do the iPad part.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we toss it back up here to the girl in front? Right.
Whoop.
Did you already finish the lamp?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's not done yet, but I have lots of working prototypes, and I brought a couple if you want to see it afterwards.
Do you, as kid, did you have also like stuffies, like a teddy bear or something?
I did, don't worry, I did have stuffies. I had a unicorn one, it was pretty special. I still have some, but yeah, I would take all my stuffies. I was obsessed with plastic animals, and I would take cardboard and I would draw out all these lands for them and make nests and everything.
And
So-
one more, does the coffee mug also work for iPads or computers?
No,
Yeah?
not yet. That will take a few more years.
Okay. Now I was going to ask you. I think you have a strong arm. There's some people way in the back.
Look at that.
Thank you.
Great throw.
Well, my question is, what inspired you to start doing this?
I think it just was something normal that I loved doing. I loved taking stuff apart, so I thought, well, I might as well put something together that could work after all these years of destroying all these computers. So, yeah, I think it was just interest of mine that I had to see if I could help solve problems.
And And also the mug, how much faster would the drink cool down?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't even remember at this point. I think it would be 5 to 10 minutes faster than average. I mean, it really depends how hot you want your drink anyways, so.
There's someone right behind you. But while we do this, for all the kids in the room, don't take anything apart at home without the approval of your parents.
Yes. Ask first. Don't take apart your mom's watch
Okay, next
until
question.
it breaks.
My question is, how did you find your idea of creation?
Like creation in general?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a very interesting question. I don't know. I think I'm very curious and I love learning how things work and reading about old technologies and seeing if I can make something out of stuff.
I think there's someone else just to your right there.
Thank you for your talk. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'll take lots of it to my children. You focused several times. You mentioned that your inspiration was after school. Mm-hmm. So I have several related questions here. Was school an inspiration to you? Do we still need traditional learning? So as you had inspiration after school, but at the same time you still need the traditional teaching. Finally, can we put the same inspiration you had after school in school itself?
Yes, you can. And I think actually the middles and I'm not sure what elementary or middle and high schools that you have here that I got to see the past couple of days absolutely have that sort of inspiration. My school didn't really support science fairs, so we didn't have like a maker lab or anywhere to tinker around. You know, the most my school had for science was physics, chemistry. You got textbooks for each. You would do labs. And maybe in grade 11, you would do a lab with Play-Doh simulating resistors. Like, it wasn't anything that got me excited about science. It was very dry, and it was all formulas when science isn't all about, you know, doing math all the time. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I got so much more excited when I came home, because I had free reign and I could try new things. And we actually had tools that I could play with to help take things apart. So I definitely think the schools here are doing an amazing job. The university has mind-blowing facilities. So yeah, I'm sure the schools will do great.
I'd like to see if we could sort of move the microphone over to this side, because there's been some patient people on this side, and then we'll come back to you guys up front after that.
Okay. So, how come most of your inventions are related with electricity?
I think that's what I've always been interested in harvesting alternative energy, which is energy that's always around us, but we don't necessarily use. So, like, why not harvest human heat? We're around it every day. We're like 100-watt walking light bulbs, yet we're not using any of that energy. So I thought, why not try and capture some of that? Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. You said one of the main things that allow you to be here is because you didn't have distraction when you were a kid. And at the same time, you said going 2 weeks without Wi-Fi was death for you.
Yes.
Now we're going into Internet of Things is having more and more momentums, which means more distraction for the kids, more distraction for everyone else, but at the same time, it has loads of opportunity. How do you think the Internet of Things or the fourth industrial revolution will affect distraction or will affect the inventor?
That's a good question. I think it will be really I think technology that's coming out can be used in a good way to educate kids, but I think it'll be really up to the parents to understand and control and set an example for the kids of how much they can use the technology or like what to use it for, and teaching kids like, hey, this is a phone. Okay, so it does all this cool stuff. Now let's take one apart and see what's inside. And for me, you know, obviously as like I just turned 20, so like obviously I'm on the internet and social media. I'm gonna get distracted a lot. So I try to manage my time more effectively, and that kind of helps sometimes. And I write out every day, not every day, but I write out like each hour what I want to do, and that helps. But it will be an interesting struggle. But I definitely think technology will definitely be a good thing for kids, but it's really about how it'll be used.
So we have a very patient person up here in the front.
How many inventions have you made, and what's your favorite one?
I don't know how many inventions I've made. I mean, I have lots of inventions that didn't work, or parts of the flashlight that just didn't work, and they're just sitting in my room. So I couldn't give you an exact number. My favorite invention, I don't know. I don't think I have a favorite one. I think I need to work on all of them still. So it will be decided one day.
And when you were growing up, was there anything that you really wanted to be?
I wanted to be either an entomologist, a person who studies bugs and insects. I believe that's how you say it. I used to have a bug hotel, and I would spray all my bugs before I went to school, and I would eat them in front of my classmates. It was great. Or I wanted to be a film director. So it was very all over the place. Or an archaeologist, but apparently they're the lowest employed job, so I don't recommend that.
So let's see if we can toss the microphone here, and then we've got some kids up front after these two here.
All right, lucky me, I have a company that has an ant as a symbol and a holding called Pure Art. But what I'm actually interested in, you are working with heat and energy, and I have a license for a solar panel that is floating that happens to produce 37% more energy than traditional solar panels.
Wow.
And I'm creating the financing mechanism to actually make sure that every household in Saudi Arabia can get them, so over a million households, hopefully. So I'm wondering, how far is your technology, and have you tested it with existing companies? And do you have the protection you need in order to bring it into the market?
The flashlight?
No, the...
the solar sandwich?
The solar, yeah, that one.
Yeah, I haven't tested it with any companies. I don't usually test my inventions. It's only very recently that companies have reached out and been like, hey, it'd be cool if you made this for us. So I will be working on it very soon. I'm just trying to sort out all the flashlight patents first. But yeah, your 37% is great. I've seen lots of science fair projects trying to improve the efficiency of solar cells and stuff. So that'll be awesome that it'll be implemented around here. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's talk afterwards then.
Okay. Is there a button? You can just shout.
Shout.
Oh, it's on. We got it.
Do the camps that you have been before take a main role to be inventor?
I think your mic was breaking up a little. Can you repeat that, please?
Okay, I will repeat. Do the camps that you have been enter before, when you ask it, take a main role to be an inventor?
Did you get? It's breaking up. Something about being an inventor.
Yeah, the camps, the
the
science
camps,
fair.
the student camps.
Science fair. For
Did the science fairs improve your ability to
be an inventor?
Yeah, the science fairs were a huge part of my growing up. I think they still are. I made so many amazing friends, best friends at science fairs, and I got to meet so many teens from all around the world who were really passionate about what they did. And I learned so much from reading other people's projects and getting them to present, as well as presenting to judges and them asking questions and me learning from them. And obviously doing the actual project was an amazing experience.
So I think we're going to do just a couple more questions, because I know people want to come up and talk to Anne and maybe see the flashlight. So go ahead.
How are you enjoying house?
Yes, I am enjoying house.
And how come you named your inventions
creation and invention?
I wouldn't know. I think I just ran out of name ideas, so I was like, this is called invention.
So we've got a young man up here in the front.
For the hollow flashlight, what if it's like winter and your hand's super cold? How would it work?
So we can, the ones that I showed earlier today don't do this very well, but you can reverse the polarities. So even if your hand is really cold, but the outside is really hot, it'll still work. We're still working on that because the Peltier tiles we use on the flashlight are less than 10% efficient. So it's very hard to get a very bright light from just yet.
Do you know when the flashlight will be for sale?
I guess in like a year and a half. That'd be my guess. It's been very complicated.
Okay.
We'll have this one be the last question, and the people can come up afterwards.
So the energy source that the flashlight uses, what inspired you to use that out of all the other types of power, like energy source?
Well, like you mean human heat? I just thought it was really interesting. I had made a flashlight the previous year that ran off the kinetic energy of humans. So it was a hand crank flashlight using piezoelectric discs, but it was very noisy and kind of tedious and just like a regular flashlight. So for the next year's project, I decided, okay, we did kinetic energy, let's do the thermal energy of humans with the flashlight and use Peltier tiles.
Okay, I think that we'd like to ask people to come up to have a conversation, but I know that some people have dinner plans. I don't want to interfere with those. So please, let's thank Anne again. So if anybody would like to come up and see the flashlights, right?
Yeah.